Blog Talk Radio. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Golf Talk Live this February 5th of 2015. Welcome to the show. We're, of course, live from 6 to 8 p.m. Central Standard Time here on blogtalkradio.com, and I appreciate you for tuning in tonight. I got a couple more great guests this evening joining me here in just a little bit. First up is going to be Mr. Barrie McWha, who is the president of Premier Golf Associates Limited. He's going to be joining me here in just a little bit. And later in the broadcast, I'll be joined by Rick Sessinghaus, is a member of the PGA as well, also as well known as the golf's mental coach. We're going to talk to him a little bit about the mental side of the game and also about his book, Golf, the Ultimate Mind Game, Your Path to Peak Performance. We'll talk to him a little bit about that later in the broadcast. Let me just remind everybody, as I said, we are live here on blogtalkradio.com from 6 to 8 p.m. Central every Thursday night, unless otherwise stated here on the network. And you can, quickest way to get there is go to blogtalkradio.com, whether it be on your computer, laptop, or even through mobile device. And you can search up in the search key. You can go to Golf Talk Live. Just type that in there, and that'll take you to the main page. And all of the live broadcasts are always up and present at the very top. And once you've listened to that at any other time, if you want to listen to a broadcast that maybe you missed, maybe you had a favorite pro that was coming on the show or guest that you missed out on, you can scroll down a little further on that main page and check out the on-demand section, and it'll give you the dates and so forth of all the broadcasts that were recorded. But as I said, we're live Thursday evenings. If you want to call in anytime during the regular broadcast, the live broadcast Thursday nights from 6 to 8 p.m. Central, you can certainly do so at 646-716-4667. That number again is area code 646-716-4667. Or if you want to email questions or comments about the program, you can do so to me personally at ted.golftalklive@gmail.com. And also, if you're in the golf industry and you're interested in maybe coming on the show and sharing your thoughts or throwing your hat in the ring, as I like to say, you can certainly email me there as well at ted.golftalklive@gmail.com. Coming up on March the 5th, don't forget, we're going to be starting up a brand new season of Coach's Corner, which will take place the first hour of every broadcast on Thursday night. So from 6 to 7 Central will be the Coach's Corner segment. I had that last year. For those of you that are not familiar with it, have a panel of coaches coming on the show, normally about 2 to 3 on average, plus myself, of course. And I'll put some questions forth from our audience and have a good panel discussion. We'll throw a few topics in there as well that maybe are of interest in the golfing world at that particular time. I may throw a few of those in there as well. But if you're interested in submitting some questions to be read out on the air, you can do so by submitting them to questions.golftalklive@gmail.com. So get those coming in. I've already got a few lined up already, but if you want to add yours to the mix, just email me at questions.golftalklive@gmail.com, and I will get that information up on social media as well here in the next little bit, just to remind everybody. And speaking of social media, don't forget you can always follow along the program at Golf Talk Live Blog on Facebook. So if you go to Facebook and type in Golf Talk Live Blog, up in the search key. You can hit the home page there and make sure while you're there that you throw us a like here as well. And always update all of the upcoming shows and who the guests are going to be every week, so you can always find out who's going to be on there. And you're welcome to post any comments or thoughts that you may have about the program, or share any insight that we can share here on live on the air as well. Also, you can follow me on Twitter personally at Ted and Buck CEO. CEO, of course, is in capital letters. Thank you, by the way, for all of the new followers last week. Appreciate each and every week I get some new followers. It's always nice. And also, of course, I update the program on Twitter as well. Also on Instagram, and I will give you that. It's Ted J. Odorico, Odorico is the correct spelling of my last name. And if you go on Instagram and you type in Ted J. Odorico, you can find me on Instagram as well. So always happy to be followed, and I appreciate those of you for doing so in the last week or so. As I said, I got two great guests this evening. One is Mr. Barrie McWha, and he's going to be joining me here in just a moment or two. And Barrie is actually a fellow Canadian, as most of you may know or may not know. I'm originally from Canada. Of course, I reside now in the United States, and love it down here. I'm in up in the Panama City Beach Panhandle area of Florida, and love it here as well. Get the best of four seasons without having to shovel the snow, and certainly love that. But Barrie's going to be coming on here, as I said, in just a moment, and he is, as I said, the president of Premier Golf Associates Limited. Let me just tell you a little bit about Barrie first, and then I'll also tell you a little bit about Premier Golf Associates, and then we'll bring him out on the show. Barrie turned professional at the Southwood Golf and Country Club in Winnipeg, I believe back in 1967. He's a lifetime member of the Canadian PGA, as well as has been the president of the Manitoba PGA back in 77, 78, president of the Canadian PGA in 83 to 84, and board member of the PGA of BC, which is British Columbia, of course, short for BC, in 93 to 95, and was a board member of the National Golf Course Owners Association in BC from 2002 to 2006. A little bit about Premier Golf Associates. Premier Golf specializes in golf course management, consulting, and facilitating the sale or purchase of golf courses, developing facilities and golf facility operational audits and analysis, systems, personnel, and marketing. As well, they've been contracted to prepare business valuations for property and business sales, staffing, training programs. Premier Golf has also managed trade and consumer shows in the golf industry. So without any further hesitation, let me bring on my very special first guest tonight, Mr. Barrie McWha. Barrie, welcome to Golf Talk Live.
Thanks, Ted. How are you?
I'm doing very well. I hope I got everything correct. You've got quite a list of accomplishments there. I would take me most of the program to read the rest out, but I thought I'd highlight a few of the more important ones. But welcome to the show, Barrie. Excited to finally have you on the program, and looking forward to our chat tonight. Looking forward to our chat.
Absolutely.
So let me ask the first obvious question. Being up in BC, how's the skiing out in BC this year?
Well, oddly enough, on the coast, the snow hasn't been that great. The weather's been too warm, and so some of the ski hills are not having a great year. Whistler is still doing okay, but
right.
But a lot of the ski hills would like to see it a little colder.
Yeah, I'm sure. I haven't gone downhill skiing in a few years, and haven't managed to make it out west yet. But one of these years, I'm going to make it out, and it's particularly Whistler. If you're not familiar with Whistler, BC, of course, they've held the Winter Olympics there in the past, and just a great resort, great facility for those of you that downhill ski. But this is a golf show, Barrie, so we're going to talk a little golf tonight. And again, thank you for joining me here on Golf Talk Live. Let me talk to you a little bit. Let me backtrack a little bit here. Just maybe tell the audience just a little bit more about how you sort of got into golf and what sort of drew you to the game, and some of the things that you've been maybe doing and working on here in the last little bit.
Sure. Well, I think the attraction for me for golf, and I go back far enough that I started in a way that's different probably than most people do today. I started shagging balls for the local golf pro, and then caddied for him, and it was a game that for whatever reason resonated with me. The environment is terrific. I was competitive, and so it started out as a game, but not with the intent of it becoming a vocation. And and then when I was 20, I got the opportunity to become an assistant and took it, and have never ever regretted that decision. So it's teaching is something that I enjoy and always have. I think the feedback you get as a teacher or an instructor of anything, when you see somebody progress with your help, is something that's really motivating. And then I just sort of gravitated into the business end of it, first as a head professional, and then as a general manager of a golf club, and finally as sort of more of a broad-based consultant in the golf business.
Yeah, and it's interesting. There's so many really components that everybody, when they think of golf, of course they think of the PGA or the LPGA Tour, and now of course conversely the Legends Tour for the ladies and the Champions Tour for the men. But there's really a lot of other, and of course instruction is always there in the sidelines as well. But there are so many other components to golf that I think a lot of people don't realize. There's the whole business side of golf that really sort of supports the industry, really, when you think about it. Everybody thinks the tour does, but really it doesn't. The tour sort of, handles its own players and handles the if you will, the promotion of golf in general, but really it's the business, day-to-day business that goes on in the golf industry that really supports itself. And you're obviously very active with what you do.
Well, I think, there's a distinction between the professional golfer and the golf professional. And, the PGA Tour is certainly the face of the game that everybody, is familiar with. But the golf professional is engaged in the day-to-day business of basically taking care of people and ensuring that golfers get what they are looking for when they arrive at a golf course. So they're quite different. Back when I started, you couldn't make a living teaching, or very few people could. So you ended up doing many different things. I think one of the great changes in the game now is the fact that there's so many great instructors, and people are more inclined to look for instruction now than they used to be.
Yeah, I agree with that, and there's such a broad spectrum in the game as well. I mean, you don't just have everybody that's teaching now, for the most part, is very well rounded. I mean, years ago you had some that would sort of teach the general game a little bit here and there. Then you've had some that come out, like Dave Pells comes to mind, that specialize more in the short game. But now you're getting other areas of golf that really had been untapped for years. I mean, obviously at the elite level, most people knew about it. Certainly players like Nicklaus and of that era, but it's really coming into mainstream. And I'm talking about the mental side, which Rick Sessinghaus and I are going to talk a little bit about later in the program when he comes on. But that's a whole area now that has really opened up here in the last decade, particularly, again, starting at the tour level, but now it's coming out down in the mainstream golf as well.
Oh, yeah. No, the fact that well, I guess that people can actually make a good living as an instructor has helped it. The fact that some players have reached the level of expertise that they do, the coaches tend to get credit, whether it's Sean Foley or, Butch Harmon or any of the others. And so it's sort of fed on itself. But I think that now, as somebody who's closer to the end of a career than the beginning, it's nice to be able to see instructors make a good living as teachers and continually pushing the envelope to get better. And in the end, golfers are the winners.
Yeah, exactly. And, I obviously, as I've mentioned many times in the program, I teach as well. And And I teach more at the corporate level. I don't do as much individual as I do on corporate golf, and it's just a personal area. I think if you become a teacher, I think you have to sort of make the decision where you want to, where you think you'll serve best. And obviously, I had always been involved in business. Had my own company a number of years ago in a different industry, and that's really how a lot of that got started. And I just decided that was an area that I wanted to specialize in. So that's really what I teach. Now, that doesn't mean I won't teach, somebody off the street in that light, but I tend to focus more on corporate golf, but for personal reasons. But I certainly enjoy anybody that wants help. I'll be more than happy to help them. Let's talk, Barrie, if we can, and there's really a couple of areas I want to do. I don't want to sort of overlap. I want to keep them separate. Let's talk about the state of the game in general. But first, let's talk about some of the benefits of playing golf. In your mind, what are some of the benefits of playing?
Well, I think the environment itself is so enjoyable. I mean, it's just nice to be outside. It's you always feel good when you've got some exercise, and assuming that you're walking, you're getting more exercise than if you're riding, but nonetheless, it's still exercise. The social component of the game, I think it's always been there. I hear a lot of comments now about golf takes too long, it's too expensive, it's too difficult. Really, it's always taken 4 hours to play, and so I certainly support the concept that 5 hours is too long and completely unnecessary.
Right.
But if you go skiing, it's an all-day exercise. So, I think sometimes we invent reasons to be critical of the game, and I think there's just so many good aspects to it. I had an occasion to have this conversation with a lady who hosted a golf show in Seattle on ESPN, and she was talking to me about the fact that golf as a social opportunity for women is much safer than the bar scene and other potential opportunities, and you don't think of it in that context, but it is a social game, and it is an opportunity to make friends. I know, as somebody who's been in the business forever, I find golf is a common denominator. If you play golf, you're not going to take too many steps before you run into somebody else that plays golf. So it's just there's just so many reasons. Never mind the competitive aspect of it. If that's what you like or need, then you can get all of that you need.
Yeah, exactly, and I agree. And just to add about what you were saying here in your last few comments about taking a step or two and meeting somebody that somebody else that plays golf, that was something that I always looked for when I was obviously in sales for many years, and when I would go into a prospective client's office, I would sort of scan around, and more often than not, I would see some sort of evidence, whether it be a photo or maybe a trophy of some kind, or just some reference that he or she played golf.
Or
suntan or something. So, and I knew that going, in the old days, you'd go in, and of course the doctor's office, you all knew on a Wednesday you didn't have an appointment. Doctors were out in the golf course playing golf. But there was always something, and I would use that as really an icebreaker, because I had a vast knowledge of the game, and obviously I was teaching even at that point. So I was able to strike up a conversation, and it was amazing how many deals I would get by doing that, because they're just as nervous as you are going in for that appointment, because they don't know who you are, more often than not. So it was a great icebreaker, and certainly became a valuable business tool, in so many ways.
Oh, absolutely. And it gives you an opportunity to, when you go golfing with somebody and you're sharing that space for 4 hours, you can get to know a lot about somebody in a non-threatening way.
Right.
And I don't think it's so much a case of so many business deals getting done on the golf course as it is people getting to know each other on the golf course, and the deal follows.
Well, exactly, and you get to really see people in a stressful environment. which is very good because I think that how that person handles themselves on the golf course, in a lot of ways, pardon me, it might be a great tool for human resource officer or somebody doing hiring, because I think if you can take a prospective employee out in the golf course and see how they handle themselves under pressure, you know pretty much how they're going to handle themselves in the office. So that might be a tool that can be used for hiring prospective employees. I don't know. That might be useful there.
That's a window into who somebody really is.
Right, exactly, and even some of the best players, have crumbled under pressure. So, obviously, I was just joking, but you never know. Barry, let's talk about in general the state of the game overall, and then I want to specifically talk about the state of game in Canada.
Sure.
What do you feel, in your opinion, is the current state of the game?
Well, I think that. I think the game is sound. I think, like everything else we could think of, there are peaks and valleys in everything. Golf certainly suffered from an imbalance between product and or supply and demand. We were creating golf courses at a great rate, a far greater rate than there were golfers to sustain it, and we've seen the net effect of that. At the same time, the fact that the game has been around for 600 years or longer. I actually came across a document that suggests a game very similar to golf was played during the Ming Dynasty.
Yes,
so it's
I've heard
been
that as
around
well.
for a while, and it's not going anywhere. There will be some fallout in terms of golf courses and all that goes with that. But I think two things happened. One, the real estate industry discovered golf as a way to sell real estate, and then the other was, when the equity club came along, and a lot of people started looking at golf as a way to make money on their membership.
Yeah.
I think that both of those things got overdone, and as a result, had a negative impact. The real estate market, at least our experience up here, is when you build a golf course and you sell real estate, about a third of the people buying that real estate actually play the game.
Yeah.
Well, most communities, that's not going to generate enough new golfers to make a golf course sustainable. So you end up having an impact in the general golf market, and after the real estate's all sold, all you've done is added more golf than there is demand in the marketplace. So I think we're seeing a correction there.
Yeah.
The other thing, of course, is the world has changed. The amount of time that we spend in front of either computer screens or laptops or tablets or whatnot, particularly the younger generations. Yeah. If you take the number of hours in a week that are consumed that way, those are all hours that people simply don't have to play golf. And I think it's something where we have to encourage people to take a look at the game, to try the game and have some success at the game. And then, golf will be fine. We're not going to see the glory days of the 80s, 70s, and 80s, because that's really when golf blossomed. But
right.
There's still in Canada, 1 in every 5 people in the country play the game. So,
and that's
that's pretty
impressive.
Good participation.
Yeah, because Canada is now running close to 34 million now, I think, 34, 35, right. Or is it more? So that's some pretty good.
The last census I think was around 34.
Yeah, 30.
So and I was just reading an economic impact study that for golf in Canada, and it's a $14 billion industry in Canada. Typically in Canada is a function of 10% of the U.S. So we're talking a serious industry, and out here, it's most people always think of the West Coast as fishing and logging, but in fact, the golf industry is bigger than both.
Yeah, and that's true. And there's been a lot of great players that have come out of British Columbia, particularly, over the years as well from Canada. And I think one of the things that you mentioned a point that you touched is a time. People's time is obviously become a little bit differently allocated, and I think that's going to your earlier point about why some people are saying it takes too long, especially the younger generation. I think what it is there's so many people are pulled in so many different directions now compared to what they were 20, 30 years ago, that they're unwilling or unable to allocate 4 hours, and especially now when you've got some places where it's taking 5+ hours, people just don't have that much time anymore. So this is why you're seeing sort of a surge, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit, but of some of different products coming to the golf market. I'm not talking about clubs or equipment. I'm talking about products as far as how the game is being proposed to play in some areas. And I think some of it's good in a way, and some of it I don't like, but I guess it's up to the individual. But there's definitely been an economic impact overall. I think the industry, as you said, Barry, I don't think it's going to die out, but I think it is going to go and has been going through a change. The biggest impact, of course, was the economy in both the U.S. and Canada, particularly here in the U.S. Canada, I think's economy, stood ground a little bit better, only because Canada has different banking laws and so forth, so their exposure was
That's
different
right.
to foreign foreign exposure. So I think Canada was a little bit a softer blow, if you will. But the game is obviously going to feel some changes as you get generations coming up. Their view of golf and that is going to be different. Tiger certainly brought a whole different group of individuals who are wanting to play the game. But what are some of the Canadian players that you like that are currently out there, both up in Canada and that are migrating here onto the PGA Tour, that you think are players to watch?
Well, right now, we've got more players on the Canadian or on the PGA Tour than we've had in my memory. With obviously Mike Weir, who is in the twilight of his career, but nonetheless a great player, and 8 wins and a Masters is a pretty good record that most of us would be delighted to have.
Sure.
Now we've seen just this past December, Nick Taylor, who at one point was the number 1 ranked amateur in the world a couple of years back, qualified for the PGA Tour off the web.com and won in December. So he's already got a win, and he's part of a group of amateurs that have gone through the Golf Canada's player development program and are now out on the tour. Adam Hadwin is another one. He was actually the leading money winner on the web.com last year. Both Adam and Nick are from Abbotsford, just outside of Vancouver, and now playing full time, fully exempt on the PGA Tour. Roger Sloan is another one from BC, and then we've got David Hearn, and so there's a number of Canadians. I think you're going to see the Canadian flag show up on leaderboards a little more frequently as we go forward this year.
Well, that would certainly
on the ladies' side, sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, I was going to say on the ladies' side, again, number 2 amateur in the world was Brooke Henderson, who's just turned pro at 17 and won her first professional event. So both she and her sister Brittany, they're from down Smith Falls in Ontario, they're both going to become factors for sure. And so I think that there's Canadians have some heroes that they can look to now, and that's only going to spawn more competitive juices in younger players.
What do you think is it going to take for one of our young Canadian players to hold up that Canadian trophy at the Open. Mike Weir was the closest we came a few years back when he was in a playoff with Vijay Singh, of course, and unfortunately, Vijay and I shouldn't say unfortunately, I'm happy for Vijay, but certainly an honorable player as well. But we were that close, Barrie, and unfortunately, Mike didn't pull through for us, but certainly played a great event. What do you think it's going to take? Do you think there's a lot of pressure on some of the Canadians because everybody's sort of wondering what's going to happen? Is a Canadian going to get in there and get the job done, or is it just a numbers game? There's just so many not just American players but international players now that it makes it that much tougher. What do you think it's going to take?
Well, first of all, I think when you look at the PGA Tour now, just everybody that tees it up on any given week is capable of winning. And so I think that the more Canadians get out there, the more they have success, the better the chances of somebody winning the Canadian Open. But, the pressure on a Canadian to win at home is, it's, first of all, it's self-induced, but it's helped a lot by the media and everybody else. And with every passing year, and it's now, Pat Fletcher won the Canadian Open in 1954. That was the last Canadian to win. But the last Canadian to win before that was back in 1915. So I think it's 100 years now that we've had one Canadian win the Canadian Open.
Yeah.
So, it's just, it's great fodder for conversation, and certainly as Canadian Open Week approaches, everybody wants to be the Canadian that finally does it, and I believe that one of them will, and it wouldn't surprise me if either Adam or Nick Taylor did it. Adam finished fourth about 3-4 years ago here at Shaughnessy in Vancouver. Mm-hmm. These kids, they know how to win. And I fully expect that in the next few years we're going to see that Canadian flag get hoisted.
Well, I sure hope so, because it's it would be nice to see. And I understand there's a lot of competition out there, so it's anybody's game. And I look at it this way: as much as I would love to see a Canadian player win the Open, I just like to see a good group of rounds put together, and I like to see somebody that obviously deserves that. The one thing I always hate in golf, and I don't care whether it's the Canadian Open or any other tournament, is I hate to see somebody lose by default. And what I mean by that is somebody else sort of takes a stumble, if you will, towards the last few holes, and that's what I mean by default. There's nothing less satisfactory, I guess, is the polite way to put it, is to win a tournament because somebody else has made some bad mistakes in the last few holes.
Because somebody else lost it.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was trying to say. Now, I'm going to give you an opportunity here to talk a little bit about, obviously, I know you came on here to talk about the Premier Golf Associates. Tell us a little bit about that, and you're the president, of course. I gave a little intro earlier on, but just explain what it is and how it sort of came about and why it came about.
Well, when I left Winnipeg in 1990, and we just decided it was time to move to a place that didn't have as severe a winter, my goal was to, rather than be the head pro at a golf club, was to get out into the industry. And so I've been fortunate enough to do a number of things, from rebuilding golf courses to recovering failed golf courses and help in the sale of golf courses. And so, I've done a number of those things. Right now I'm involved in a golf club in Sechelt that is just undergone new ownership, and will be building a big hotel and remodeling the golf course. So that's exciting and interesting for me. I think one of the things that's nice about our game is I just can't imagine what retirement might look like.
Right.
And I'm not giving it any thought. I actually don't play as well as I used to, but I enjoy it more. And
right.
so it's, there's always things going on. It's an exciting industry with great people. And so Premier Golf really, works on projects for golf course owners, typically. And, but I did for 5 years. I had a contract to run a consumer golf show as well as a trade show for the industry, and
right.
And again, that was just interesting stuff. It's it's a little bit out of the norm, and that's where the interest comes from.
And that's something that really I think is great for the industry, especially now in this economic time. And as we talked about a few moments ago, I mean, obviously Canadian golf is in a little bit different shape, if you will, than here in the U.S., mainly because of the economy. Our economy tended to fare a little bit better through this recession and that. So I don't think as many maybe felt quite the impact as some of the ones down here in the United States. But let me ask you this. Do you think the days of and I don't think it's going to go out completely, but do you think the days of private club memberships are going to dwindle to a point where I won't say it will be non-existent, but but will be far and few between? Do you think that people, just as the generations are coming up, they want to play around more? They don't want to be sort of emboldened to one particular facility. Do you find that that's becoming more and more a trend?
Oh, I think so, yes. I think there will always be a place for the elite private club because, there's a certain number of people that for one reason or another either will gravitate to that environment or can afford to or whatnot. But I just certainly don't think we'll see any private clubs getting built very often.
Right.
Where it was a status symbol back in the 70s and 80s and 90s to join a private club, that's no longer the case. If we go back in time to, say, 1970, there were either private clubs or municipal clubs.
Right.
And if you were a dedicated golfer and playing at a municipal course, you had to be up at 5 a.m. to get in line to get a tee time.
Yeah.
And that's what fueled the growth of the private club. Well, now there's so many golf courses, you don't need to join a private club in order to have a good golf experience. And the 30-somethings and 40-somethings of today, it just isn't on their radar screen. They're doing so many things. They are busy. They have kids that require a much more managed, structured lifestyle than our kids did when they were growing up. So it's just a different world.
Well, and I think too, one of the other things that sort of transpired at a later point was groups like Club Link in Canada and Club Corp down here in the United States, where they acquired a number of properties and sort of offered that membership where you could actually play multiple courses for a modest fee.
Yeah.
So it was again, it was more of an investment opportunity, but it was something for executives or for those that had some disposable income that wanted to invest into a private equity club or have a feeling of going into a private equity club. But not be, again, emboldened to one specific facility. So you might have a host facility in your area, but you might have had, and I'm not sure what the repertoire of Club Link is now, but I believe at one point they had a dozen or so, if not more, courses in their group. And Club Corp down here in the United States, if I'm not mistaken, I think has about double that. So it still gives you that sort of feeling of a sort of an exclusive membership, but at the same time gives you the flexibility that if you're somebody that travels a lot with business or travels with your family, you can get access to other courses through that membership. So it's sort of kind of the best of the both worlds. But I agree with you, Barry. I think that some of your private clubs, we've seen it certainly here down in the United States. It certainly has dwindled substantially.
Well, I think the sort of middle income private club is the one that is most at risk. You know, if you look at Vancouver, you've got Capilano and Shaughnessy and you know, Royal Montreal down east and so on. There will always be enough people that want to be in that environment. But I think the typical private club in the middle income range is the one that has had to start looking at green fee play in order to pay the bills. It's become less private. And of course, as there is pressure on memberships, you know, the business model starts to not work. And what we're seeing here is, you know, clubs that used to have 600 members now have 500, and they're heading for 400. And that either means everybody that remains a member pays more, or you have to look for other revenue streams.
Yeah, one of the things they did, and I'm sure a lot of the courses have done this, is they would open up a temporary membership. For instance, down here in Florida, some of the courses, what they've done is they will offer to many of the snowbirds that come down here, they will offer a winter membership where they'll pay, you know, X number of dollars and get access, limited access, of course. Now, some of the courses didn't like that. Some of the members didn't like that. But I think just the economic pressures, as you indicated, with the memberships drawing down, have really sort of forced that hand. And you know, and I think it's good. You know, as players, as members get older, and some, you know, are with us and some are not with us anymore, the memberships dwindle down. And as you pointed out earlier, the 30s and 40 somethings, they're not really as interested in doing that. In fact, I know of somebody here in the golf business that his son has an opportunity. He's out in California, and the father, of course, is probably up in his 80s, I think he said. But his son plays golf, but he travels a lot with business, and he's had an opportunity to become a member at his father's course, and just doesn't have that same desire. Certainly plays at the course, but just doesn't have the desire to join it, because for what he would pay for his initiation and so forth, you know, he can play a multitude of resort courses or some of the best courses if you want around the world, and still have money left over for the kids. So, you know, there's just so many opportunities. You know, you go down to Orlando, you've got Disney has properties that facilitate with golf courses. So there's just so many options for the family. And I think this generation coming up now has become more, you know, even though there's a lot of independents, still they're more family oriented. They want to do things that the whole family can go. And even though maybe they don't all play golf, by going to some of these great resorts that have golf there, the ones that play golf can play golf, but there's something for the others to do as well. And that is not always available at some of your member courses. But you know, it's definitely a changing industry. I think we're going to continue to see more change and more modifications. And this sort of leads me into another topic here. Some of the latest cures, as you put it in your notes here, things like foot golf, 8-inch and 15-inch cups, and of course snag and some of the other things that are out there as well. A lot of changes to accommodate. Good or bad, in your opinion, and what are some of the good things about some of the changes that you're seeing out there now? Well,
just before I answer that, there's just in the golf news in Canada right now, there's a golf course in Greater Toronto that is a private club, and the members are considering an offer of over $400 million to sell the golf course for development. So, of course, all of the other clubs in Toronto are paying close attention, because there's probably going to be 1,000 members that are going to be looking for a home. And so it's going to be interesting to see. Now, there's a case where land is so expensive in the major centers that you know, no longer does it make sense for it to be a golf course. And we'll watch that one unfold. As it relates to foot golf and 8-inch cups and 15-inch cups, I think if you own a golf course, at the end of the day, you need people on your property, or you're not going to stay in business.
Right.
And so I would never be critical of anybody that employed those things. There's actually a foot golf association in Canada, as I know there is in the U.S.
Yeah.
And I think there's about 20 clubs that are members of it.
Mm-hmm.
I was looking at it. I'm still having trouble getting my head around who goes out and does that. And I've never played soccer. Clearly, foot golf is a takeoff of soccer, but
sure.
As I said, it's if you own a facility, you got to find a way to get people there. And one of the things about golf that sometimes golfers fail to pay attention to, and that is, you do everything that is necessary to prepare a golf course for play. Mm-hmm. And so you've committed all of those financial resources, whether it's equipment or employees or fertilizer or anything else. You do all of that before the first golfer hits the first ball. And those costs are fixed, whether you have 1,000 rounds a year or 30,000 rounds a year.
Right.
And so that's what golf courses are going through right now, where they're seeing revenue shrink, but the expenses aren't. And, you look at a fairway mower right now, typically costs about $60,000 to $70,000.
Right.
That takes a lot of golfers to pay for that. And so it's challenging times, but at the same time, good operators will find a way to survive. I think there's a number of people in our industry that have come out of that build it and they will come era, and that's not the era we're in now. So it's
that brings me to a great point that you had just made. That was the era for a long, long time, and I think that's really, if I was to have a criticism of the golf industry, because there are unfortunately still some in the industry that feel that way, that if you build it, they will come. And the truth of the matter is that isn't true. You have to go out and you have to get the business. And years ago, you might be able to build a golf course, open your doors, and just by pure curiosity and volume of new golfers that were coming out, as you said, in the 70s and 80s and even a little bit into the 90s, you were able to facilitate that, particularly in big centers like Ontario. I'm sure you saw it out there on the coast as well, in some of your larger city areas and that. But now it's kind of gone the other way, and there's still some in the golf industry that think, well, I'll just get up and open my doors at whatever time, and everybody's going to show up. And I can't begin to tell you how many times I've either driven by or gone into a property, and there's hardly anybody playing. And I think a lot of that is just because, again, the time, there's economic reasons as well, but a lot of it is time. People just don't have the same time that they did at one point. And even a lot of professionals, as we joked about earlier about some of the doctors out there on Wednesdays, that's not happening the same as it used to.
No, because, what we're going through isn't unique to golf. It's, I don't know of anybody who isn't busier or working harder than they used to. And,
right.
That just impacts everybody. I think that where golf is concerned, we have to earn the business, and then we have to fight to keep it. And, we're competing. We're not in the golf business. We're in the entertainment business, and we're competing with every industry that is going after the disposable recreational entertainment dollar.
Yeah.
So, I think one of the things that happened with golf is we allowed owners and architects to build golf courses that were just simply ego-driven, and they were difficult and they were expensive to play. And what that did was it fueled that mentality that says golf is an elite game for the rich. Just when we had got to a point where it was a game for the masses, thanks to Arnold Palmer and Jack Nicklaus and others. We got back into this, $200 green fee regime, and so that's impacted us because there are a lot of people who think that's what golf is.
Yeah.
And so, I think it's just a matter of good business people working hard at their craft and making good business decisions. They'll all be fine. The ones that aren't good won't make it.
Right, exactly. And I'm certainly a big proponent of utilizing some of these new things. I'm certainly a little bit of a traditionalist. I like the traditional game of golf itself, but I understand that as the market changes, you have to change as well. And if you don't, I think what people are worried about is that they're going to take away the traditional golf game entirely. I think that's what some in the industry are a little bit skittish about when they hear some of these things like foot golf and making the cup bigger. They're not talking about changing every cup out there. They're just talking about adding a new dimension, if you will, to the game so that it makes it interesting. Here's the way you have to look at it. You have to be able to grow a sport regardless of what it is, and you can certainly play traditional, but as people change in their personalities, as the mind changes and develops, people are going to think of new and creative ways to have fun. And ultimately, that's what we want, is we want people to have fun that play golf. And if they're not having fun, if it's too challenging, if it's too expensive, I know many people have said to me, going to the cost end of it, and you're right. Earlier on there, a few years back, they were starting to really grow the game, and a lot of people were coming out and playing. I remember a lot of middle-class families, workers out there that wanted to get out and recreation, play the game, were coming out there. And then all of a sudden there was a big boom, as you said, with these new golf courses, which look beautiful and great for the guys playing on tour, but the average middle-class family can't afford to pay $100 to $200 per round.
Yeah.
And they kind of shot themselves in the foot.
I've been in the game long enough. I can remember back when a set of 3 woods went through the $100 mark at retail. And we all thought, God, we'll never sell another set of woods again.
Yeah.
Golf balls were $1.25.
Yeah.
Now we're looking at Pro Vs being, $7 or $8 a ball, and drivers we're looking at, $300, $400, $500. If you try to sell that to somebody who doesn't play the game, they're going to think you're an elitist. And so we've got to encourage people to come into the game. And this whole debate about the long putter, I think, I'm a traditionalist too. But you know what? If somebody keeps playing because they use a long putter, then God bless them. Keep at it.
Yeah.
And they won't be able to play in the Canadian Open, but they weren't going to anyway.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and I think that's good. I think keeping it out of the major level, I agree with that. I think that they need to have, and I know that they've let it creep in over the years, but I agree with that, and I agree wholeheartedly with what you said. I think if an amateur wants to play with a longer putter or play with a specific type of equipment that helps their game, what difference is made if it gets them out in the golf course. I think too many people, as you said, that are just not have sort of taken it on their laurels that people are just going to walk on the golf course and start playing. And what they don't realize is people are a lot more crafty with their money. They're going to spend their money, a 20-something. When I was 20 years old, I was out playing golf when my friends wanted to go out and play, and we enjoyed a great round. 20-year-olds today, unless they're specifically interested or driven to golf, are not doing that. They're, spending that $25, $30, $40 downloading music from iTunes or doing something that with their computer and that. That's where they're spending their money. So if the golf industry wants to tap into that market, then they need to make golf more accessible. One of the complaints that golf has, unlike tennis, for instance, I've heard many people say this, for basically $15, you can go buy a tennis racket, and maybe a couple dollars more, you can buy a sleeve of 3 tennis balls, and you can play pretty much anywhere. A golf course you can't, or a golf you can't do that. You're looking at maybe at best $200 for a decent set of golf clubs, and then you've got to get out on a municipal course somewhere that could still cost you $25, $30. It's just not comparable. So they have to find ways of making it affordable for the masses and not just, again, give that impression that it's an elitist sport, and it still has that, unfortunately, out there.
Very, very much so in many cases. And I think the good operators are finding ways, they're finding times of the day, their days of the week where they can make golf available. We started a couple of years ago using the Get Golf Ready program and introducing people to the game and doing it relatively inexpensively. And once those people start playing the game and start having fun, then they're not going anywhere. They're going to keep coming back. But if they don't get started, we've all got a big problem.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's why, and we didn't really touch on this. Unfortunately, I'm getting close to my time here, but another area too is the women's market. Certainly it's done very well in the professional level, and it's starting to build some momentum in the amateur or the everyday sort of level. But there's still a lot of work to do there, and obviously the junior golfers out there. I think the more that we can encourage and get them involved in it as well, I think is going to help keep this game going. And I think that's just something that the industry has to really and it has been taking a closer look at. But we're certainly not going to solve all the problems in one radio broadcast. But I appreciate your thoughts and input, Barrie. Let me just let you take this last moment or two if you want to let the listeners know if they're interested in getting in touch with you concerning Premier Golf Associates. If they're interested in what you have to offer, how they can get a hold of you, and is there a website or something that they can visit, or how can they get a hold of you?
Yeah, the website is premiergolfassociates.ca, and they can always email me at bmcwa@premiergolfassociates.ca. It's been fun, Ted. I've really enjoyed it, and I've listened to some of the earlier broadcasts in preparation for this, and will continue to be a fan. So
well, I appreciate it.
I look forward to future shows.
Well, I appreciate it, Barrie, and you have an open invitation. You're welcome to come back here anytime and talk some golf. And I want to thank you for sharing with my listeners tonight some great insight to the game. Ladies and gentlemen,
Barrie, mine. Thank you.
Barrie McWha, another fellow Canadian from British Columbia. Barrie, have a great evening, great weekend, and thanks for your support of the program.
Thanks. Good night.
All right. Good night. All right, that was my first special guest tonight, Barrie McWha, president of Premier Golf Associates Limited, and you can learn more about them. And if you're interested in getting in touch with Barrie, you can do so through his website at premiergolfassociates.ca, not .com, but .ca, and you can reach out to Barrie through his website there and learn more about Premier Golf Associates. But again, I want to thank Barrie for joining us tonight on Golf Talk Live. I see that my next guest, Rick Sessinghaus, is waiting in the wings. So let me just do a quick introduction, and I'll bring Rick out, and we'll talk a little bit about the mental side of the game, and also about his book, Golf: The Ultimate Mind Game, Your Path to Peak Performance. As I said, my second guest this evening, is Rick Sessinghaus, and he is a member of the PGA and also well known as the golf's mental coach. And he certainly is an expert on the mindset principles that make or break performance on and off the course. His coaching has helped both top junior and collegiate as well as professional golfers reach new levels of performance. He has an illustrated editor for Golf Tips magazine and can be seen on Fox Sports Network as a mental game contributor. His book, as I mentioned, Golf: The Ultimate Mind Game, has been featured in national golf magazines and used by leading golf instructors across the country here in the U.S. and is considered to be one of the best resources to improve your mental game. His teaching philosophy revolves around his mind-body swing performance system. We'll talk to him a little bit about that. And he also holds a doctorate in the applied sports psychology arena, and we're going to talk about that a little bit as well. And if you can bear with me here for just a second, we'll bring Rick on to the program. Good evening, Rick. Welcome to Golf Talk Live.
Hi, Ted. Thank you. This was great.
Great. Thank you for joining me, Rick, and I'm looking forward to talking to you. I got your book all ready here to go, but let's just let the listeners, obviously you have really too many accolades to read out all. We take up most of our time reading everything out that you've done, but if you want to just take a few moments just to share with the listeners, I know many of them know who you are, but just let them a little bit more know who you are and just sort of how you got involved in golf and some of the things, some of the great work that you're doing, and then we'll get into some of the questions in a few moments.
Sure. I was fortunate that I took up golf around 12 years old, played other sports. Friend introduced me to the great game. And it was one of those, as most of us, we thought it was going to be an easy sport, and then you get hooked into the challenge of it, which I certainly got into that pretty quickly. I thought this would be, hey, this is an easy game. The ball is just stationary. But as we all know, it's a challenging game. And long story short, played a little bit of junior golf, high school golf. I was a football player, but that was cut short. And then I was fortunate enough to walk on at Cal State Northridge to play college golf there. So I got to play Division I college golf. Mediocre career there, played a little bit professionally afterwards, became a member of the PGA. Been teaching what I call traditional golf instruction for over 20 years. But what I was so intrigued with was why, when I played in a college tournament and I was hitting 13 greens in regulation, and a guy who was all over the place, he would beat me. And I was trying to look at, why is that occurring? I thought it was all about a great golf swing. I thought about perfect positions and ball flight and everything. I found out pretty quickly that, certainly that is a skill, ball striking, but short game and mental side came into play and playing under pressure. And I just became very intrigued with kind of that, why certain players played better under pressure than others. And unfortunately, I was one that had a hot temper. I had a hard time dealing with poor golf shots. And so I started to seek. Experts and books and just went down that road. And the last 10 years have really I dove in with both feet, and I went back to school, got a doctorate in sports psychology, and I have been mentored by some great mental game coaches. I still learn a lot to this day, and I just love having those conversations with players of, what are they thinking? What are they feeling when they're on the golf course? Because I don't think they're always honest with their swing instructors. I think they always want to blame, I'm coming over the top again and slicing it, fix it. And then the swing instructor fixes it, and then they come back the next week and still blame their swing. So that's kind of what I'm intrigued with. So, I got to play at a fairly high level. I'm a member of the PGA, understand swing mechanics certainly, but I really like the coaching end of the mental side is really what I enjoy.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting, and we're going to get into the meat and potatoes of that here in just a moment, but I think what's interesting, and I applaud the industry for really shifting in that direction right now. For a long time, of course, it was all about swing mechanics and creating sort of the picture-perfect swing. And I know a few times, I don't do it as much anymore, but a few years back, I had some people come up to me and say, I want to look like so-and-so. I want to swing like his or I want to swing like hers. And I'd say, well, why? And they said, well, it's just, everything's just perfect. And obviously they were talking about tour players, and I won't mention names, which tour players, but certainly some great looking swings, and certainly have had some success. And I said, well, I want to show you a swing. And I would pull out a video of Lee Trevino. And I said, how about a swing like his? And they said, well, I don't want to look like him. And of course, these were younger, players, so they didn't even know who I was showing them. And they said, well, no, he's kind of all over the place. And then, of course, I would run through the list of tournaments that Lee has won. And it's like, you're kidding me with a swing like that. And I said, now, I'm not saying that I want to make your swing look like that, but I just want to show you it's not about what the swing looks like. It's about whether or not it's functional and whether it's going to do what it's required to do. And so once that you sort of break it down and show people and explain to them that it's not all about getting everything just in the perfect position, because as we know from many players, Lee's the best example I can think of off the top of my head, but Jim Furyk's another one. If you were to analyze Jim Furyk, he's another player that certainly in some people's mind doesn't have the picture perfect swing, but look at the tournaments he's won.
Exactly. And I think what's interesting at the trend in the industry is certainly we know more about the golf swing than ever before, and we're going to continue to learn a lot. We have these biomechanics out there that are using 3D vests, and we've got some great technologies out there with force plate technology and stuff. So we know more about how the body works, certainly.
Sure.
And, which, again, it makes me even more intrigued. It's like we can try to make these robot golfers and getting to perfect positions, but does that mean they know how to shoot low scores? Does that mean they know how to make decisions and play to their strengths and, of course, strategy? And when they're feeling pressure, guess what? Their body responds differently. So we know enough about motor patterns that if I'm under stress and I'm relaxed, my muscles will react differently. Yet we keep focusing on getting people in these perfect positions without understanding that they're in a different state. And if they're relaxed and if they're staying focused in practice, great. But now they get pressured, now they have tension, and their swing will break down. But everybody wants to keep blaming the swing. And there's
I had a little thing I used to do, and it was really kind of a little bit cruel in some respects, but I had a really good relationship with the course back home when I was still living up in Canada, and I knew the guys that ran it really well, and I would go up there and I didn't actually work for them at the time, but I used to take some private clients up there and teach on their facility because they had one of the best facilities in the area. But one of the things that I used to do is the way that the range was situated is you had a bird's eye view of the first tee. So what I would do is I would wait until they got a few people lined up there, and then I would go in and ask them if I could cut in front, and I would bring my students and say, okay, we're going to play a few holes. And they would be doing great on the range, but then as soon as they stepped up the first tee and there's 5 or 6 golf carts behind them full of guys waiting to get out there, the pressure was on. And it was to prove a point that now they had to put their game on. We're not on the range anymore. We're now out ready to play around, and you've got an audience. And it was amazing how many people would suddenly get very uncomfortable. You'd see the beads of sweat rolling around. But it was to prove a point that, you might have a great game out in the range, but now you've got to bring it to the golf course. And that's what more instructors are starting to do now, and realizing that we need to take the game out in the golf course. It's not a range game. It's a game to be played on 18 holes. And with you know what I'm saying. But it was a little bit cruel. I didn't do it to everybody, but I did to a few that especially if I felt they were a little bit cocky. I didn't do I never did to the ladies, but I would do it to some of the young guys out there that would get a little cocky, and it certainly put them in their place real quick. But needless to say, let's talk a little bit about, Rick, if we can. What is your coaching philosophy when it comes to the mental game? What do you believe is the best way that we need to approach this?
Sure. Well, I do a lot of seminars across the country, and I ask 3 questions from my audience, and I do this on one-on-one clients too. Is I first ask the question, is the mental game of golf important? And I almost get a unanimous yes. And then I say, the second question is, when was the last time you trained it? And I usually get blank stares, or no, not at all, or yeah, I read a book on it and I get cold training it. But then the final question is really where I kickstart it with is, what is the mental game? I think we have this idea of the mental game being about positive thinking or just something out there, right? Mm-hmm. And I think it's been my goal, and I think this came from more of my swing instruction, is that there's cause and effect relationships we know with club face and path and what the ball does, and we teach off of that. Well, mentally, because it's hard to make it tangible, and actually it's getting easier, which we'll get into a little bit later, but how do we make the mental game intangible where they know what are the skill sets, what are the actual things that we can train, what are the techniques that we can utilize? So when I get with the mental game, I look at it as fundamentals, just like anything else in golf. And with my book, every chapter had a different fundamental. So I'll quickly just kind of go over them, but we have motivation, why you play the game. So what motivates you to go play and spend the time and the resources on it. And I want somebody to be motivated for, their own reasons. I want them to enjoy the game. I want them, if they're motivated by challenge and they're motivated by tournaments and competition, great. If they're motivated by just being outside on a beautiful day, motivated by being with friends, there's a lot of great reasons for us to play this game. And so I want people to be motivated for the right reasons so they can continue to play and enjoy it. Then I get into goal setting, which is what do you want to accomplish? So if motivation's why you do it, goal setting is going to be what you want to accomplish. And it could be about score, certainly. It could be about winning a tournament. Sometimes, I have people who said, you know what, I want to have a smile on my face after 18 holes. I'm tired of being my energy drained and yelling at myself, and I just want to enjoy it. Or, hey, I want to play 36 holes over the weekend and not be in pain. I mean, physically, they want to be able to enjoy it that way. So there's a lot of reasons, we play, but also goals, what do you want to accomplish. But then I start breaking those down as, what's in your actual control to achieve those goals. And then we get into another fundamental, which is practice. What are you doing, practicing and training those new skills? Are you utilizing your time on the range, in the gym, on the putting green successfully? Are you prioritizing? Are you practicing how you should be playing, which is we can talk about later. It's definitely, I think golfers are the worst athletes at practicing. They bang a lot of balls, but they're not really practicing. They're never practicing under pressure. There's no consequences.
Right.
And other sports, there always is. And so I think practice is the fundamental. I think preparing for an event, a tournament is important. What do you do the night before, the morning of, on the range? Those are what I call off-course fundamentals. But when we start talking about mental game on the golf course, I boil it down to three key areas: focus, confidence, and emotional control. And focus is where do we place our attention any given moment? We can either be focusing on something that's relevant, which would be the lie, the yardage, the shot, the target, the shot you want to play, or you could have your focus be on something that's irrelevant, maybe a distraction, as we would call it. A distraction would be swing thoughts, focusing too much on score, focusing on outcome, consequences, playing partners, pace of play. All those things could be distractions for you to be completely focused at the task at hand. So focus is a skill that definitely can be improved through proper pre-shot routine, asking better questions. You ask a question, it gets you more in the present state. Like, oh, what is this lie going to do? How is that going to affect my shot? Where's the best place to be on the screen? Those questions now elicit a very specific answer and keeps us focused on something. Our eyes are also very important for focus, and where we place our eyes, our attention will follow. So, we want to, with focus, we want to place our attention on what we want instead of what we don't want. And that's not about being positive thinking either. It's about, at the first part of my pre-shot routine, I do want to know if there's a bunker on the right and there's water on the left. That's relevant information. But by the time I pull the trigger with that club, I want to be focused on what I want, which is maybe a three-quarter 7-iron, 15 feet left of the hole to the middle of the green. That becomes a relevant something to focus on, a cue to focus on. So focus is definitely a key element of the mental game. And then we get into confidence, which I think is really the core of any performance, is, do I really believe that I can hit the shot? And so often, the opposite of confidence is doubt. We work real hard and yeah, maybe we focus on what we want, but when we get over it, we truly go, I have no chance, or this could go anywhere, and that doubt actually creates, a reaction in your body. I mean, it creates tension, it creates trying to control the club, it speeds you up, so that doubt again triggers full emotions that go through your body. So I think confidence is a key one. Confidence can come from anything, of course, with good results, right? You hit a good shot, you feel good about yourself. But what happens if you're not hitting good golf shots? Can you still be confident? And I think that's where I come into play, right? I mean, the mental game's pretty easy when we're playing well. We're probably in a pretty good mindset where we're focusing on the right things. Confidence is there. But what happens if we're starting to get off the rails a little bit and hit a few poor shots? That's when the skill sets really kick in. And I think confidence is one of those that can be very fragile for golfers, and me being able to coach them and say, hey, what would give you confidence? And number one answer I get is results. I go, great. But can we remember past results? Can we remember our best rounds of golf, our best golf shots, and then remember those to change our state? And, of course, we can. And then self-talk. What are we saying to ourselves? Posture. How do you walk? How do you carry yourself is going to affect how you feel. So confidence is a biggie. Because if I'm confident over a shot, there's that commitment that comes from that, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, exactly. And there's some players that we see on tour that have obviously more we'll talk about some of them here in a few minutes as well. But there's been players both in past and even in present who sort of exude a much more confident mindset, if you will. When you watch them, you can just tell by, and I guess I'm going to spill the beans, but Tiger, of course, is probably been one of the players in the forefront. Of course, Nicholas as well. But there's certainly been some other players that were very well-focused but very confident players, and it showed in their game. And the players that didn't seem to have that confidence, and everybody, might look at it and say, well, they're out in the PGA Tour, they must have confidence. Yeah, they do to a certain point. They have confidence in their physical part of their game, but mentally, we've seen how many players over the years we've seen will be, leading after the 3 rounds. They'll get into the final round in the last 9 on a Sunday, and suddenly will collapse.
Exactly.
And that's not because they lost their golf swing. It's because they've essentially had a mental breakdown, if you will, and that's simplifying it. But that's essentially what's happened.
Right. No, and you bring up a good point. I mean, confidence in golf is very situational specific. So you're right. You could be confident for 3 rounds of golf, see your name at the top of the leaderboard, and then go, uh-oh, am I really this good? Do I deserve this? And now we call that out of your comfort zone. And comfort zone is a form of confidence, is do I really believe I can do this? And we've all had it, right? We've had those, that putt for a skin against our buddies, or, bets have all doubled, and now we're feeling uncomfortable. Well, confidence is that first thing that tells us, hey, can we do it or not? So comfort zone and confidence are definitely related. So that's a great point. And I think, confidence leads into kind of the last fundamental, really, and is emotional control. And a lot of things, there's subtopics under all of these. So emotional control has a lot to do with mental toughness and how you bounce back after adversity. And mental toughness is an interesting one because, you hit a poor golf shot in golf, and how do you deal with that, right? And I teach a lot about a post-shot routine. What do you do after you hit it? Now, in college, I hit a bad shot. I slammed a club down. I said some choice words about myself and went storming to the next shot. Well, there's a lot of things wrong with that scenario. I mean, one, the more emotion you put into something, the more you're going to remember it. So I was only just stamping these bad shots over and over again and remembering them. And then when we look at, I'm not learning from the shot at all, and I'm still frustrated going into that next shot, which now causes this momentum shift, and now you get on the bogey train. You keep making a bunch of bogeys and realize that, hey, I needed to manage my emotions a little bit more. Doesn't mean you're happy that you hit a bad shot, please, but if you can be neutral, if you can be able to learn from the shot, I think that's a key part of a post-shot routine. But on the other end, I'll ask people, especially good players, I work with a lot of competitive players, let's say you hit a great golf shot to a foot. You hit a great 5-iron to a foot. I ask people, so do you celebrate that? And they go, what? What do you mean? I go, well, do you tell yourself internally good shot or anything? Like, they go, well, no. I go, why not? They go, well, I expect that, and they have these big high expectations, like they should do that all the time. And I'm like, well, that's kind of unfair because you beat yourself up for all the bad shots and you never give yourself credit for good shots. Now what? So it's on both ends of the scale, is that, give yourself some credit. It doesn't mean you have to do a bunch of Tiger Woods fist pumps, but it does mean acknowledge you hit a good golf shot. Give yourself some credit. And on the other end, learn from the poor shots so you minimize from them happening again. So when you're on the golf course and we're talking about focus, confidence, and emotional control, I ask everybody in their pre-shot routine, can we be focused, confident, and relaxed? Can we allow our body now to do what it's been trained to do? And if we do that, I think we've achieved a lot of the mental part of the game, And like I said, there's a lot of other subtopics that go below those, but to me, that's the core. So once I can educate people on that and they understand their pre-shot routine and their post-shot routine, which anybody can do to get focused, confident, relaxed, then they go, okay, I get it. Okay, now what are some tangible things I could do? And that's what we can, talk about here now, if you want, is, whether it's self-talk or breathing or visualization, there's all these great tools out. And the other exciting part with the mental game is we now can measure it more. And we couldn't do that before. We really couldn't. And, I'm fortunate I get to use some great devices. One is called Focus Band, which measures brainwave activity, and it really helps me. It helps the student now get some biofeedback of what are they focusing on? Are they in their left side of the brain, the analytical, or are they in the right side, kind of their subconscious, the automatic side that we would want to play golf in. How much tension, how narrow focus can we get somebody? And so that's one device. I do a heart rate variability that I'm learning right now that has to do with heart rate and how that affects our emotional state and performance. I use personality profiles to try to get some tangible information about, who we are as a person is going to show up on the golf course. And so I'm excited because there's so many new avenues in the mental game to train it and make it more tangible for the golfers.
Yeah, and it's interesting because it's still relatively new. What I say in the mass market. I mean, obviously this is something that's been going on at the higher level on the tours and things like that. But really, the general public, it's really scratching the surface right now. Even though it's been around for a few years now, the general public is really starting to understand how important. And I want to read something out of your book here really quickly, and then I want you to respond to it. And I'm going to read a couple of them as we go along. But Arnold Palmer, you wrote some quotations here. Golf takes more mental energy, more concentration, more determination than any other sport ever invented. Would you agree with that?
I would, and the main reason why is that it's a non-reactionary sport. I played a lot of other sports, and the physical running around and reacting to a ball or another person actually made it much easier to not think and to just be an athlete. And I think when the ball is not moving, I think it's literally up to us. And with that comes different challenges as it comes to mental. So totally agree.
Yeah, and here's another one too. I want to read, and then we'll get on to some other things. But Bruce Crampton wrote this here. Golf's a compromise between what your ego wants you to do, what experience tells you to do, and what your nerves let you do. Now, that's a true statement if I've ever heard it. And explain to the listeners why that is true.
Well, sure. I mean, there's a lot in that quote, and that's why I loved putting it in there. When we talk about expectations and ego and stuff like that, I tell the story all the time. I said in college, I could hit a three metal or 3-wood off the ground 260 yards, and on par fives, I'd go for them in 2 and stuff like that. Well, now I'm 44 years old, and I have that same shot, and I can think positively all day long and what I used to be able to do, but that 3-wood's going to go 240 right into the water. So I have to understand where my game's at, and our ego does want to remember our best shot and think that we're always going to do that. Expectations of what we think we should do can get in the way, certainly. But let's even say that you have your ego in check, you have your expectations in check, and you have a high skill set. Now the nerves is back to this mental side of the game. Your muscles, your brain, they're all working together. And what are the signals that your brain is giving your muscles? And if it's about fear and about don't do something, your muscles are going to react a certain way. If it's, hey, I can't wait to hit this shot, this is going to be cool, and then our body reacts a different way. And that's where we get the difference between actual performance and execution. So, again, I love that quote for many reasons, but right at the end there, you're right. I could practice all day long, but there's that last thing that needs to be aligned, and that's he calls it nerves, and I just kind of call it our mental state.
And it's interesting too. You made a point a few moments ago about a player that hits a 5-iron, let's say, to a pin, and it lands a foot or so from the hole, and really gives very little reaction. Even though, like you said, it's a great shot. You should certainly celebrate that. It's really unrealistic, even for a tour player, to think that they're going to hit it to that spot every time on every hole. If they did, they would be winning every tournament. And it's kind of interesting. Even at that level, there's still sort of that mental picture going through their mind. It becomes an expectation. Again, falling back to their physical ability as opposed to their mental ability. And even their physical ability is not going to be. I mean, certainly some great players. We could talk until the second coming here about some of the players out there that had phenomenal ball striking abilities. But when you look pound for pound, how many tournaments that they won compared to some that maybe didn't have, as we talked about Lee Trevino and even Jack Nicklaus to some extent, was certainly not one of the best ball strikers in the history of golf, but yet his record still stands today. And it just goes to show you that even some of the best players still struggle a little bit with the mental side of the game. I want to read you, speaking of Jack Nicklaus, I want to read this. I want you to, because this really kind of sums up what you were talking about earlier, back in college. And he quotes here, he says, "I'm sick of playing lousy. First it irritates you, then it really bothers you, until finally you get so damn blasted mad at yourself that you decide to do something about it. I've decided to do something, and I will." Now, talk about ending with a confident statement.
Right.
That pretty much sums up, I think, how most people, as you talked about, and I think it's more at a junior level. I mean, there's certainly some seniors out there, I'm sure, that still, stomp a club down here and there, but mostly I think that's an ego thing. When you're in your 20s or late teens or what have you, even into your 30s, you think you're invincible, you think you're going to be able to conquer the world, and when reality sets in, your emotions take over, and it isn't until we get a little bit more seasoned in life that we allow our emotions to become more in check. So that's a very true statement, and that's coming from one of the best, in my opinion, one of the best players in the game from a mental standpoint. Would you agree with that?
Oh, no question. And I think there's a key part of that statement is that, again, I think mental game has been categorized as just positive thinking, and it's not. I think you got to sometimes look at yourself in the mirror. I call it a reality check and say, hey, this is unacceptable. I can either keep playing this way and have a bad attitude and do that, or I can do something about it. And doing something about it could be mental. It could be physical. I need to go get a golf lesson for the first time and understand why the ball goes to the right. It could be, hey, I need to go to and do some stretching to get more range of motion because I'm losing distance. What's great about golf is there's so many different variables that we can control and we can look at. So, yeah, I may be biased to say the mental game is a huge part of it, but you can't neglect that you got to have skill and you got to have the proper club fitting and you got to have a certain level of fitness to let the body do what it needs to do. And I believe the mental is that last component that puts it all into action. So I think what I liked about Nicklaus's statement, again, you get the reality, I don't like it, let's do something about it. And he has that way to reframe it at the end that you're right, does become positive, it becomes confident, it becomes I'm in control, I can take action for it. I think a lot of golfers, and this is mostly the junior college player, sometimes doesn't want to take responsibility. They want to blame things. They want to blame course conditions. They want to blame the bumpy greens. They want to blame playing partners instead of saying, you know what, I didn't do it today, and I can do something different next time. And I think that's what Nicklaus was always so good at. Is he had a reality check and he made those changes.
You really, when I look back, and I just want to talk about him for just a second, but when I look back and watched Nicklaus play, especially in his earlier days, he really was a man of very few words on the golf course. When he hit a shot, good or bad, you didn't see a lot of emotion. I mean, he might occasionally come up with, "Oh, Jack," or something like that, but that was about it. And I don't want to give the impression that he was a machine or anything, but he just really didn't show a lot of his emotions on the golf course. He recognized that he hit a shot that wasn't going to do or wasn't going to go where he needed it to go, and then he adapted around that. He accepted the fact that it didn't go where he wanted it to go, and he moved on. And even to this day, there's a lot of players that we see on the tour that just haven't seemed to master that. And again, there's a laundry list a mile long that we could go back to, where you'll see literally a breakdown throughout the round. And what always puzzled me, and it's not happening as much now, but it happened for a long time, is when that consistently happened for a number of weeks on the tour, suddenly a new swing coach would be coming in and, a reinvention of the swing, when really that was not the area that needed necessarily the work on. It was something else, and we all know what that was, and obviously that's what you're focusing on. But Jack was such a great, and now in more recent times, Tiger. Let me ask you, speaking of Tiger, what is your opinion on his state of the game right now?
Yeah,
I'm throwing you under the bus, Rick.
No. It's very interesting because, of course, being in the golf business, I think it goes through your head, and I'll honestly, I get a kick out of some of the Facebook forums that are out there with teaching pros who think they have the magic cure. Unfortunately, I think for Tiger, a few years back, the perfect storm happened with injury and his family and changing swing coaches and technique. That's a lot to ask from anybody, and now you've got somebody who's under the microscope like that is. So that's very difficult. I think it's interesting. I believe it has become a little more mental, just because there has to be a commitment to a golf shot, and I'm not seeing quite that as much. At least what I'm hearing from colleagues is that in practice rounds and on the range, they're seeing some really good ball striking. They're seeing some swings that look more natural and stuff. And now we know that we have some short game issues now to deal with. But I think he's just got a little too much going on in the head from an idea of one changing things. And I think if we thought about, release point with our chipping, and it's going to be a little different than it was 8 months ago, I think that would be challenging for anybody, right? We take a golf lesson and we change something and somebody feels uncomfortable. I think he's changing maybe too many things, and that makes him in an uncomfortable state. But as we saw today, it looks like still the main thing is he's got to get his health in check. He's got to be able to finish a round, finish a tournament, and that becomes a big concern down the road. So unfortunately, I think there's a little bit of everything. I do think he's going to win again. A major, I'm not going to bet on that. I think he's just too talented and too much discipline to do otherwise.
Do you think, Rick, and then I want to move on because we've got some other things that I want to give you an opportunity to talk about. Do you think that maybe in some respects, now I know things have worked out, but a little differently for this next gentleman I'm going to mention, but do you think that maybe there's a little bit of a Freddie Couples scenario happening here with Tiger? And I'm talking about, obviously, we know Freddie's back has bothered him for years.
Yeah, I mean, Freddie was, kind of my idol when I was growing up. Yeah. I just loved his talk about his personality, right? Kick back and nothing's going to bother him. Yet he's an intense competitor, and people need to remember that just because somebody looks relaxed doesn't mean they don't want to win. And with Freddie, he obviously had a back that literally blew out, and he's always had those issues. And he's had to, whether it's changing practice habits, but he never really changed his swing too much, right? He's only had a couple instructors in his career, so you never saw the major overhaul going on. They have similar dynamics in their swing with the hip rotation and the torque, so you do see some similarity there. Unfortunately, with Tiger's left knee issues and Achilles and stuff like that going on, he's actually got more things I think he has to worry about than what Freddie did.
Yeah. Freddie was always, I watched years ago when I was up at the Canadian Open, and Freddie was there, and I believe it was on the first tee, and he pushed a shot to the right side there, and that just happened to be at that time where they had a lot of the corporate tents, and it landed, it was still in play, but it was not far from the tents, and of course they had it roped off, to prevent anybody from going out. But I was able to get close to him, and it was just amazing. He was just such a nice guy. He'd come over and talk to everybody while he was waiting for his shot, and just a really incredible guy, and just unbelievable. I can't remember now, but the shot he hit was just. He had a few trees to kind of get around or over or something, and it just sort of danced when it hit the green, and it was just amazing to watch him, and just a great personality. But the reason why I mention that is because Freddie, as we all know, struggled for many, many years with his back, and it almost got to the point where he was seriously considering getting out of golf altogether, and I guess managed to rectify that. And now, of course, he's been out in the Champions Tour here and enjoying it, and I think he just loves it. But yeah, you're right. I mean, to look at Freddie, you'd think he's sitting back and cruising down the number one highway, but he is a very intense player and certainly a thrill to watch. But it'd be interesting to see what happens with Tiger. Rick, I want to get you a chance to. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to mention briefly. You mentioned about kind of Nicklaus's personality, now Freddie Couples' personality, and that's something that I do study is I want people to understand that who you are can shoot low scores. You don't have to be like somebody else. When I was growing up, for me, it was Freddie Couples, Greg Norman, and Nick Faldo. Well, those are three different personalities, three different golf swings that produce great results. And yet sometimes, and this is a lot for my juniors, and parents want their junior golf, their sons or daughters, to be a certain way on the golf course. So they'll tell me, hey, I don't want little Johnny talking out there because he's not focusing. And little Johnny just loves to talk, and it relaxes him, and he still shoots low scores. Why would you change that? I want him to be intense. It's like, that ain't not going to work. And then on the other end, maybe they do need to be more intense, but that's normally how they are, but they think they should do something else. So I think you find what works for you, certainly, but don't be different because it's under pressure, or because then you're going to stress your system out like, oh, this matters now. I better be quiet and be intense. And the first 3 rounds, you were having fun talking to your caddy and doing that kind of stuff. So realize your personality does come into play, especially under stress and pressure.
Well, let me give you 2 real quick scenarios, if you will, or 2 examples, rather, of what you just talked about. As we already mentioned, Lee Trevino, not only did he have a unique swing, but it was obviously very difficult for even players like Jack Nicklaus to get Lee to shut up on the golf course. So we all know what his... but that was part of his shtick, if you will, and he just enjoyed it. He was a talker, and that's what he did. But the other one was, too, about changing, brings to mind Nick Price. For years, I heard a lot of people and a lot of announcers talk about, because Nick obviously has a very sort of a quick-looking swing compared to some of the others on tour, a very short and snappy-looking swing. But, again, he won multiple tournaments, many tournaments out in the PGA Tour and now out on the Champions. But, a lot of people thought he should change his game around as well, but that was part of who he was. And you're right. I think too many people, parents, players, try to be something that they're not. And it's okay to look at other players and to mimic certain things, but ultimately you have to be yourself and bring out your own personality in how you play. Otherwise, you're not going to have fun.
I agree.
Rick, let's talk about, you've got a website here that specifically deals with coaching. It's www.mzcoach.com, letters M like Michael and Z like zebra, coach.com, and it's a virtual mental game coaching program. Tell us a little bit about that and what some great things that you're doing with it.
Sure. No, I appreciate it. So several years ago, I wrote the book Golf: The Ultimate Mind Game, and I think it's a very good book, and I think it gives a lot of the fundamentals. Yet that next stage of how could people train it, how can people kind of have their own kind of coaching protocol, and if you weren't going to work with me one-on-one, where is that going to occur? So I have some business partners who said, hey, let's do more of a virtual-based type of thing, and so we created this MZ Coach, which stands for Mental Zone Coach. And it's basically saying, hey, we're going to give you these modules, and in the modules, there's these 9 performance factors. Some of them I've already mentioned tonight, focus, confidence, emotional control, and so on and so forth. And each is going to have video instruction, audio instruction, worksheets instruction, so you can actually now go through your own mental game system. And I wanted something, again, that was more tangible, that somebody could always go back to, videos on pre-shot routine and post-shot routine and course strategy that was done in an easy-to-digest format. And so we're very excited about that. So, mzcoach.com, Mental Zone Coach, is something that we launched in 2014 and looking forward to grow here in 2015.
Fantastic. And that's really a big direction that the industry is going to is more of this sort of virtual golf game, as I talked about with my earlier guest, Barrie. More people are finding that their time is it's always been valuable, but I guess the time restraints, they don't always have time to get out there and take what we would classify as a traditional lesson. And I think it's very interesting, some of the creative ways that many of the professionals in the industry are finding, such as yourself, in using a sort of virtual platform. And you're seeing more and more of it. I'm sure if you were down, I didn't go this year, but I saw some last year down at the PGA show in Orlando. But a lot of very creative and inventive ways to tap into that. And that's really going to help tap into the youth market, I think, because as we know, you can't pry the tablet or the iPhone out of their hand anyway, so you might as well, get out and do that. And you know that yourself from working in the game for a long time. So it's a great platform, and it sounds like you've got something, especially Again, we can talk for hours about the physical side of the game, but the mental side of the game is something that really, I think, is going to start being pushed into the forefront. Would you agree with that?
I do. I think it's really the next frontier in that, when I got into golf, certainly David Ledbetter and Butch Harmon really made golf instruction, it made it important, saying, hey, you've got these great instructors with this great knowledge, and you can get better by taking lessons. And then I think we got into a little bit of club fitting, and then the last 10 years, a lot have been done with the physical fitness part of it. You have TPI, Titleist Performance Institute, at the forefront there. Club fitting now. I doing a story for Golf Tips magazine. We were at a facility called Cool Clubs in Scottsdale, Arizona, which just blew me away of the technology we now have for club fitting. I mean, holy smokes, we got everything there. We got biomechanics with the 3D. We got force plate. We got everything you want to know from a physical standpoint pretty much now, and club fitting, and the best teachers that have shared their knowledge. We know a lot about what's going on correctly in a golf swing and incorrectly. Yet, back to the start of the interview, is what's going to really make that system run is going to be the mental side. What are you thinking? What are you feeling? How are you going to react to situations? And there's some great mental game coaches across the country and in the world that I'm still learning from, and I think you're going to start seeing a push that people are going to be more accepted of that. They've read great books by Rotella, and they kind of get the idea of what it's about, and I think you're going to start seeing more of that as you go along, which is great. I don't look at it as competition. I look at it as great. We get more people out there to understand the mental side of the game and have some great coaches out there that can do that. I think that's going to benefit everyone.
What I'm looking to see is sort of a domino effect of, a change in the caddy system, if you will, where you're going to see it's going to be a caddy, swing coach, and mental guru all wrapped into one.
Yes.
That's, I think, the next evolution of golf, really, at the elite level, is having it all wrapped into one, and you're going to start seeing some of your top mental coaches carrying the bag. So get yourself prepared there, Rick. you may be carrying on tour.
Yeah, no, it's interesting you say that. I mean, I'm fortunate that probably over 50% of my lessons are playing lessons. So we're on the golf course experiencing shots, talking about them, doing them. It's just not on the range. It's not sitting down at the table. And that's what's great. I mean, you have to apply it in the real world. And I think that we just have more knowledge in general. So you mentioned about caddies. I have some friends who are caddies, and they're great players. They understand a lot of that. And you're right. They have to be a psychologist for their players a lot of the time. And by them knowing their player, understanding what is going to help them, you're right. It is another layer. And then you put swing instruction with that, and you're right. I think you've got the next hybrid of caddy there.
Well, you know what? I think it's just something that I mean, I'm obviously joking, but you never know. I mean, it could essentially happen. I mean, that would be what a trip that would be to see some of the caddies going in and getting educated in sports psychology, and many of them actually really in a way have. If you think about it, if you listen to, we talked about Freddie and Freddie for years, his the name slips my mind, Joe, that carried his bag for years was pretty much that for him. I mean, he talked him, through different situations and that. But so in a way, a caddy does kind of play a similar role. You mentioned Golf Tips magazine. Let me first let everybody know that, of course, the top 25 instructors in America by that very magazine, which you do some editorial for them. Tell us a little bit about that. How did that come about, and how long you've been doing that? And some of the you mentioned one of the stories, but what are some of the great things that you're doing with Golf Tips?
Well, thanks for mentioning that. Yeah, Golf Tips, I've written for the national magazine for about 7-8 years, and had the opportunity this past fall to take over the editorial content. And it's been a great challenge, and I'll be honest with you, I was blown away with how many quality golf professionals and instructors there are out there. Now I get a network of people who have written in the past, and I was reaching out to people that I wanted to meet and learn from. And so my view on a magazine is that we're about golf tips. We're not about profiling tour players. We're not about travel. We're about, helping that average player get better with some simple yet powerful instructional articles, and keeping it simple and not trying to confuse people. And with that being said, this year we're looking at doing some stuff on technology, but keeping it simple. And we're doing a section for women and juniors and seniors and really be able to talk to everybody. And I don't think instruction has done that in the past. I think we've just said, hey, okay, how to fix the slice 7,000 times. And I think there's other elements out there. I brought on some great mental game coaches that are going to contribute, and some physical fitness, and like I said, technology, club fitting, but in a very simple manner. We're not going to get too in-depth with it. We're excited. We're going to be doing a lot of digital formats this year and video that'll be embedded, so we're looking forward to that. And so, yeah, but back to the instructors is that, I've traveled to Orlando and Scottsdale, and here I'm in Los Angeles, and I'm excited for the industry in that there are a lot of very dedicated men and women out there that are learning all the time, and they're just very good, and they really want best for their students. And I think more that we have of that, the more the game's going to grow. It's just, it's sometimes hard to find those quality instructors, but they are out there for sure.
Yeah, and I know, and I'm sure you're familiar with who I'm going to mention, but I know another gentleman that's been on the program a few times actually now, Barry Goldstein, is also involved with golf tips, and I have a lot of fun. Barry's been on here, and of course with his daughter Carly Ray, who he has a great love for, and has a phenomenal junior golfer, just unbelievable records. And it every time she does something, it just blows up on Facebook. So, and understandably so. And I love Barry. He's just great. And I kid him around, and I'm gonna ask you. I know he'll kill me for doing this, but I'm gonna do it anyways. I had a fun with him the very first time he came on the program, and I said, Barry, I said, and I was actually talking to Carly Ray about this. I said, I don't know if you know who I'm talking about, but I said, do you remember an old series way back? I think it was probably in the 70s called Chips, and it was California Highway Patrol. And, well, you know who it was. I didn't know if she would. And I said, I want you to go back. I said, you probably don't know who I'm talking about. I want you to go back, and I want you to Google that. And when it comes up, I want you to let me know whether or not you think your dad looks a little bit like Eric Estrada. Well, of course, Barry just cracked up. And I said, you got a little Eric Estrada going there, Barry. And we had some good fun with that. But he thinks he looks more like Rocky. But, but anyways. But Barry's a great guy and just a lot of energy, a lot of, positive energy, and just a great guy to have on the show as well.
Yeah, I think, and again, he exudes exactly what Golf Tips is about, and I think overall the PGA and LPGA is when you have an instructor like Barry who's very talented and is very positive and wants the best for their student. I mean, he's just very passionate about helping students, and I think we as instructors have to keep on understanding that student is vulnerable. That student, they're paying good money to improve, and they're frustrated. And I think we certainly obviously want to have a great skill set of understanding how to improve. But I think when it comes down to it, how do you build relationships and support? And Barry's one of the best at that. And again, I'm getting to meet a lot of other very talented and passionate individuals for that.
Yeah, and the sort of the traditional magazines that have been out there, and I've made no bones. I've actually let my subscriptions lapse this year because I just got so frustrated. And I'm talking about really the two major ones that were out there, Golf Digest and Golf Magazine. For years, I think they served a purpose, but it's become too much advertising, and I understand that advertising has to pay for the publication, but I got tired of flipping through 11 pages of either Viagra or Cialis advertisements, and I've said that before on the show, and I'm not making any bones about it. I understand that they have to pay for the magazine, but it's just that content is not there. And I know Golf Tips approach things differently. I know that you have your share of supporters and things as well, but it just seems you're focusing more on really what golfers need out there, and kudos to Golf Tips magazine for doing that.
Well, thank you. We have a core audience. We're obviously looking to grow, but we know what we do best. We're going to give good instruction with some great contributors. We're going to give some equipment reviews to help people, make a good decision. And that's what they want. We're not going to get into the other stuff and lifestyle and this and all that kind of stuff that you're starting to see with the other magazines. and that's fine. They're trying to appeal to a different demographic, but we know what our avid golfers want, and that's what we plan on giving them.
Yeah, and that's important. You know, and that's really why you go to a lot of these resources. You know, you want to get information. Now, of course, so much of it is being done online.
Sure.
And that's sort of appealing to sort of the younger demographics, and even really some of the older fellow guys out there and gals as well are becoming a little more tech savvy, whether it be through their grandchildren or children or what have you. So they're getting on there as well. So I think that's great that we're seeing more video content and things like that, and more virtual systems coming in play, and I think it's going to, certainly help the industry. Rick, I want to give you. It's hard to believe we're getting down to the last few minutes here already. I can't believe we're this last almost an hour gone. But let's talk a little bit more about the book here in just the last few minutes, and then let everybody know where they can get their hot little hands on a copy. So let's just talk about that. I know we don't want to go through everything here. Obviously, we don't have the time, but there's just too much in the book to really get to everything. But what do you want, number one, what do you want people to take away from reading this book?
Tangible action steps that they can take to the course. When I was first writing it, I wanted to write this really 300, 400-page book about everything about the mental game, and then I kind of looked at myself one day and go, who the hell wants to read that? And so I wanted to be able to kind of bring it down to what are some actionable steps. After every chapter, there's a little section called My Shot, which is, basically what can you do? What are you going to apply when it comes to team, and that it's not just something we talk about, it's something we do. So I want people to understand that it's a pretty straightforward book. I do talk about some of my background, and that, why I got into this business in the first place was I had some challenges, I had frustrations. I didn't deal with some of the things that golf provided, and I needed answers. So I definitely share my own experiences, rely on, you mentioned some of these great quotes from some of these great players, and research that's been done to help people play better, which I know is the main goal, but my really deep down is I want people to enjoy the game more, because I know if they enjoy it more, they're going to play more, and they're going to bring more people into the game, and I think that's what it's about, and it's not always about what we shot. And if we can find ways to enjoy a game, even if we have a few bad shots, and I think then I've done my job.
Well said. And one of the things that's kind of interesting about that, I've played with some good players. I've played with some not so good players. And I'll be honest, and it doesn't apply, I don't want to blanket it and say it applies in every case, but there have been a lot of players that I've played with, that I've got matched up with over the years, just, going out to the course and joining in a foursome, that really were not the best players, but they had a lot of fun when they were out there, and they laughed at themselves occasionally. And then I've played out with some guys that, you would think that they were putting for the Masters, and it was just the most unpleasant experience. And and being somebody in the teaching profession myself, you want to reach out and sort of help them, but at the same time, it's just like maybe they need to fall a little bit more, and then get them, dust themselves off and get up, because it needs to be sometimes a humbling experience. And I think you obviously have experienced that in your transition into where you are now, and that's helped you obviously to write this book. And I think that we all have to, sort of learn from our mistakes, but then we have to be able to move forward. And there's just some people that aren't willing to do that, and that's why they need to get their hot little hands on this book. So, Rick, if you will, let everybody know where they can get a copy of it.
Great. Well, the easiest way is Amazon or BarnesandNoble.com. So Amazon, and then it's Golf: The Ultimate Mind Game, and again, my name Rick Sessinghaus. So you can get it there. It's both a paperback and a Kindle version there, and that would be great.
Yeah, it's a great book, and it's one of these books, to be honest, and thankfully I'm glad it's only about 130. I think it's 132 pages, so it's not a 300 or 400. It's actually something that you could actually kind of slip into your golf bag if you want, into the little pocket there in your golf bag. It's small enough to fit in there. But it's full of a lot of great advice, really. I don't want to really say so much tips as opposed to it's really some great advice. And it's something that I think that the average golfer is definitely going to benefit from. I thoroughly enjoyed reading it. You did a fantastic job. And I've read some
Thank
others
you.
out there. There's a lot of other good books out there, but this one, I liked it. It was really to the point and really helped you think about what it is that you want to do and why you're out there in the first place. And I love the quotes. I mean, that's why I wanted to read a few of them out here. Some great quotes from some great champions out there. Rick, unfortunately, our time has come to an end, but I want to thank you very much for coming on the program tonight on Golf Talk Live. I've certainly enjoyed it, and I appreciate your thoughts and input, and I appreciate what you do for this game. And you have, as I say to all everybody, you have an open invitation. You're welcome to come back anytime and share some more thoughts. Thank you for.
I appreciate it, Ted. Thanks. Go ahead.
Yeah, not a problem. Just remember, if you want to get in touch with Rick, here's some great ways that you can do it. You can visit. He's got actually 3 websites here. Rick Sessinghaus, Sessinghaus.com, and it's spelled Sessinghaus. Of course, Rick in front. golfsmentalcoach.com and mzcoach.com. And if you want to email Rick, you can do rick@ricksessinghaus.com. Rick, thank you again very much for coming on. Thoroughly enjoyed the conversation. And again, if you want to get a copy of Rick's book, you can go to Amazon or barnesandnoble.com. Thanks, Rick, for joining me tonight on Golf Talk Live.
Thank you very much, Ted.
All right, you have a great evening.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye. Okay, 2 great guests tonight. I thoroughly enjoyed it, as I said many times. I want to thank both of my guests tonight, Barrie McWha and, of course, Rick Sessinghaus, for joining me this evening here on the program. And also I want to thank all of you for taking this opportunity to listen to this program worldwide, for faithfully tuning each week to Golf Talk Live. It certainly has given me a great pleasure in having a number of highly talented coaches, teacher professionals, authors, and entrepreneurs stop by the program, and it's through their participation and guest appearances that have helped to make Golf Talk Live a first-class show. Special thank you, of course, to some of the sponsors and supporters of the program, Mr. Jonathan Laird, of course, from South Coast Golf Guide. You've heard me mention him many, many times. Make sure that you visit his website at www.southcoastgolfguide.com. Great publication, comes out every quarter. A lot of great courses down the southeastern part of the United States, virtually from Texas right over to Florida. If you want to come down and play some great golf all year round, make sure you get a copy of South Coast Golf Guide. Also, make sure when you're on Facebook to go to South Coast Golf Guide. Just type that up in the search key when you're on Facebook, and make sure that you throw a few likes. Check it out. There's, I believe, a digital version of the book that you can get through there as well. But if you want a hard copy, you can, while you're down here, there's a lot of the courses and many of the hotels and that throughout this area, throughout the southeastern part of the United States will carry it. And if not, you can get in touch with Jonathan through his website, and he can have a copy sent out to you pretty much anywhere you are. So if you're even coming down from Canada, he'll certainly have one shipped up there to you as well. So visit southcoastgolfguide.com. I want to thank Mrs. Meredith Kirk, who was the 2014 Mrs. South Carolina winner, and went on to the Mrs. U.S. title. Didn't win that, but certainly did very well and had a great experience. And she, of course, is the founder and owner of Meredith Kirk Golf. Great young lady, great asset to the game, and does a lot of work. She's going to be coming on here at the end of this, I believe it's the end of this month, coming on to the program. So I'm looking forward to having her back on. She's been on before. Thank you, Meredith, for all your continued support of the program. To Nikki and Tiffany Litherland from Down Under in Australia, who I believe now are here over in the United States. Thank you for all your support of the show. Mr. Bernie Pinder from Ontic Golf, and Mr. Peter Doyle from Doyle Golf Solutions over in Ireland. Thank you, gentlemen. And also Mr. Barry Goldstein. Sorry for throwing you under the bus, Barry, but you're a great guy. I know you'll take it on the chin with the best of them. So thank you very much. And I will see all of you right back here every Thursday evening at 6 p.m. Central Standard Time, right here on Golf Talk Live. God bless everybody, and have a great weekend.